The superpower that every citizen has is the ability to control where they spend their time, money, and attention. By focusing these on supporting local businesses, you are having a profound impact on your friends, your family, and your local community. So if you want to change the world, you can start with buying local.
What a day.
Has it been good or just?
It has been good. I came out this morning so I get up about 4 because I don't know if you know I have a farm. And I came out to 10 dead chickens this morning.
Oh, no.
Yeah, a fisher cat got into my barn and decided to wipe out a third of my coop, unfortunately. So, but other than that,
a wild cat?
A fisher cat. Well, you know what's funny? It's a fisher. It's actually a weasel. It's in the weasel family.
Okay.
And they are very efficient killers, and they enjoy killing. And unfortunately, they tend to not eat all of their kills. I don't know. Some people have told me they kill for sport. I don't know if that's true, because I've heard from other people that understand animals that they don't kill for sport. They're just very efficient killers. So they might kill a whole bunch and then think that they're going to come back for them. I don't know. But there was 10 dead. There was actually 9 carcasses. One of the dead chickens was missing, and that's what happened. This happened to me a couple of years back, where I don't know how they got in, but they got into my coop itself. This was an old coop, and they'd gotten in, and they'd killed like 13 chickens. But one of the chickens was missing. So they always seem to kill them all, take one. It's unfortunate.
It is. Sorry.
Yeah. Other than that, though, it's just been a busy day. We're super busy right now. We've got so many things going on. Yeah, we're hiring people, losing people, all the stuff that businesses do for business. Yeah.
How's the rebranding going in the Glens Falls?
It's going well. I got to make sure I got some publications for you too to take with you if you haven't seen the Glens Falls Today. But yeah, it's going good. We let's see. So we're a year deep. Well, in September it was a year for Glens Falls Today. Mm-hmm. It's going amazingly well. We have 3 print editions for Glens Falls Today on the street. Number 4 we're working on right now, and then January 1st we go to a monthly in that market.
Wow.
So yeah, it's going well.
Excellent. I'm glad for you.
Just a lot of activity, man.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff going on. Any questions before we get started?
No, I'll just roll with you being my guide.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Welcome back, everyone, to Buying Local. I'm your host, Mike Nelson from 5 Towers Media, joined here today by Neal Stimler, Stimler Advantage. He's going to tell us what that advantage is today. Neal, how are you, man?
I am well, Michael. Thank you for having me. Delighted to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming in. Obviously we know each other. We've talked on a few occasions. You've written for us in the past.
That's right.
But you haven't written just for us, though. You've written for other online print magazines around the country.
I have a long publishing career in history.
Yeah.
I have about 15 pages worth of citations and publications I've written over the years.
Nice.
As a guest blogger frequently, and writer, I've written for Forbes as a guest contributor. So I write on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah, Forbes is a pretty good one to have on your resume, huh?
Yes, it was a great collaboration with Kathy Hackle, who's an expert on the metaverse and Web3 spaces, which is an area of interest of mine. Yeah,
I was going to say that's and that was something that you had. Web 3.0 was something we came out, I think, in our second magazine that we did.
Yeah, we focused on small business and how Web3 might impact small businesses. People that are taking it just out of the big picture space of larger organizations, but how could it actually impact smaller organizations as well?
It's funny because how quickly our environment changes.
Oh, yes.
Right? So that was that a year ago?
It
year
was.
And a half ago?
And just the interest around that phrase and terminology has morphed into a different conversation already.
Yeah, now we're all talking about AI.
Yeah, and I'm still keeping a pulse on that space. I think the conversation has sort of moved in 2 directions of interest, one being spatial computing. So the continued interest of using mixed reality headsets or devices or computing platforms for a more immersive computing experience, which is, I think, interested in human-computer interaction design. Mm-hmm. And there's also more of the game engine environment. So you'll see a lot of corporations and brands now still experimenting where they maybe were so under the metaverse umbrella, continue to do that with gaming platforms.
Yeah. It's funny. Speaking of Meta, I've seen the switch that they've done recently with their advertising for the metaverse. And they actually finally found a way to make it look cool. Whereas like before, it just never really looked that interesting. But I saw a commercial of this, I believe it was a young woman playing piano virtually, learning how to play piano with her headset. And I was like, I'm like, that actually was kind of cool if it's going to help you learn how to play an instrument. I thought that was neat. But
I'm used to the interesting interfaces and designs of these devices. I've been a tester for many of them over the years. I was a Google Glass Explorer back in the day.
I remember Google Glasses. Those things were looking cool until they didn't.
I really enjoyed it. I wore it for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And my mission with it, at the time, I was working at the Metropolitan Museum of New York City. And I traveled around Europe and the United States, and I brought it to different institutions and gave people a chance to try it firsthand for themselves because it wasn't available commercially. It was for testers only at the time. And I found that it was a really simple technology for people to use if they had a personal connection or a guide to help them learn it. So it was easy as a cell phone once people got the hang of it. And then once they had the chance to try it for themselves, I think they could begin to see, like a lot of the devices that we're in the generation with today, what the potential application was or could be for them in their industry.
Yeah.
So the more access we have to these technologies at a fair price point, we can build a marketplace. We can build tools on top of it. I know for me, the MetaQuest 2 being sold at popular distribution centers like a Target or a Walmart or online for an affordable price, I think is really powerful in bringing that.
What's affordable? Because last I knew it was like $300 or $400 for those things. Is that affordable?
True. That's true. It's a good point. I think in comparison to some other more expensive devices in the market at the time, which would be things like HoloLens, for example, or even Meta's MetaQuest Pro, which is a more expensive device.
So that was crazy.
There are different price points in the marketplace. And it is important, I think, for businesses as well to think about how many devices they may need or have in their fleet. If we're talking about laptops and mobile phones and tablets, what rank of importance is this kind of technology or device in your stack? How do you deploy it across multiple units in your teams, depending on what you do in your industry? So there are serious considerations operationally in running a business and thinking about how to use these on the enterprise level. But it's also thinking about delivering content to your consumer that's going to be growing in this space as well. So I just had a conversation recently with someone in town yesterday who's family is using this technology, and especially I think it's very attractive to young adults and younger professionals who are expecting their world to be accessible through these devices. So if you're thinking about future-proofing and planning your business, this would be a good thing to start planning for if you're not ready to jump in right away. Yeah,
future-proofing. What a crazy thought. I wish I knew what was going to happen in the future. It's so hard to just such a crazy is the only word that comes to mind, but just such a crazy environment and so unpredictable at this point. Like I never would have predicted that we would have shut the whole country down for a matter of 6 to 8 months, but we did, so it's just interesting. When you say that future proof, I'm like, how hard that is right now. Because who knows what's going to happen the next year. We have such a crazy world we're living in.
I agree with you. I think that proofing for me is, and it certainly could be understood in one context as guaranteed success in the future. But I think about it more as being almost proof of concept. You're constantly testing ideas so that you're prepared for a future and the dynamic change that's happening. I agree with you that the pace of change has become even more dynamic and unstable. Terms
unstable for sure.
Terms that I've been reading a lot about are polycrisis and permacrisis, where we're in a world in multiple crises happening at the same time, which is super challenging for people in their individual lives and in their business operations. And as an advisor, what I try to help folks do with their tactical and strategic engagements is really work at trying to solve those problems. I think sometimes it can be overwhelming to think about the various issues we have, whether it's a software transition or a board transition or a new product line. And we can get defeated sometimes ourselves, I think, in just the struggle of what we're going through. And I try to be a support for people when they decide to commit to make those changes.
Yeah. And it's just crazy. Like even now, as a media company, a marketing company, and with the AI craze that we're in right now, and trying to say like, all right, like, where do we draw the line? What do we implement? What do we not implement? What's going to be needed? Like, future proofing, right? Like, is AI really going to be a tool like everyone thinks it's going to be? Or is it going to be Google Glasses, right? Where it seems cool and it's the buzz, but then it kind of just fades away. Cause like, are Google Glasses even available now?
I believe
are they in use?
I believe there might still be an enterprise version available in some contexts, but I can't speak to that directly. But To your point about AI and the, what is the technology topical cycle of the moment, I would say in the past, this cycle used to be every few years, then it condensed in every few months. Cycles now it's much faster. AI to me seems much more like a utility that will become a foundational piece of tools and systems we already use. At least that's how it's being presented to us by the major tech companies, but I think it can be used that way. A lot of the work that I've done in the past on the software side is helping customize specialized software for certain industries. And the key there for AI, I think, is making sure that you have, of course, following the permissions and guidelines required for whatever industry you're in, thinking about that regulatory concern, if there are for things like healthcare, for example, very important issues. But in the case of the asset library and the data library that you have in your content management solution, making sure that AI is appropriately paired. I think a lot of the dissatisfaction people may have seen early on with some of these machine learning experiments was they had great expectations for what the results would be. And we've seen how those technologies are evolving and they are going faster. But if you
I
don't
blame
have,
Star Trek for that, by the way.
It could be, yeah. If you don't have a good metadata structure, information about information or data about data, backing up your content flow, there's not much for the machine to learn.
Right.
Or to learn in a context that helps your business or helps your customer. So it is going to be that companionship, I think, of human leadership with the software and other things that people put out there to help
really
go forward.
That integration, right, of all these things. And you were kind of saying similar things about Web 3.0 too, right? It's like, how do you integrate this and how does it work with your current systems? Or, it's what a world.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I just want to make sure that businesses going forward are resilient and sustainable.
Yeah.
Of course, I think many of us have stories of friends or colleagues or companies that we valued that we've seen them go through difficult transitions, loss of staff, loss of opportunity, loss of product, services, or capital in the last few years especially. And I try to have empathy for my clients and my users, and I want them to be able to keep their people, but to redeploy them in new ways. I want them to be able to continue working if they're, for whatever reason, they're not able to open their front door to provide services to those customers. So I think really making sure that people are able to respond to the threats that are constantly coming is essential. And I think that's, if the door does close, we have to stay open. And making sure that on an operational level, we're prepared to do that is really important.
Well, you say, you talk about the perma crisis.
Yeah.
It's like a perma transition in business these days for small bit. Like we are like, I know, like as a small business, with just under 10 employees, like we're in a permanent state of transition because we're constantly growing, constantly adapting and moving to the next level, which once we get there in the next 120 days, relatively speaking, then guess what? We're going to start transitioning again to the next stage of things. And it's a constant state of flux.
It is. And it can be certainly overwhelming, I think, for small business owners, though.
Yeah.
When do I participate in this technology? When do I respond to this trend? Can I afford to? Is it the right time? Do I have the people? Do I have the right clients to bring this and test this in a marketplace? There are a lot of complex decisions to go into thinking about that. But I think the biggest thing I would foreground is making sure that you just commit to moving forward, knowing that you'll have to make a critical decision. I think this is where strategic planning in a more dynamic context, not thinking about it as something you do every 1 to 5 years, but something you're doing all the time.
All the time.
Using agile methods from computer and project management, from computer technology and project management really help, where you can see a calendar of things. You can see things that are blocked. You can see things that are moving forward. You can see dependencies. And just knowing this is going to be an ongoing thing you have to address. So, I constantly do the same thing for my business. I'm asking questions. Are the services that I'm offering valuable? Am I communicating with people in the right way? I'm seeking that improvement as well. It's challenging, too, is our digital landscape, which is reliant upon in many ways for small businesses, third parties, keeps changing. There's a great podcast, The Decoder, which is from The Verge, and they talked recently about the importance of websites. Again, right now that we're talking about websites as social media, the importance of websites and blogs. As social media as a landscape has changed so much and becomes very difficult for business owners, especially who really want to just authentically communicate with their customers on whatever platform they want to choose to be on. But as those platforms' algorithms change, as their rules and terms and conditions change, as the audience changes, it's a hard decision to make on what you're going to invest in.
We've had that conversation with most of our clients, and some clients that we've been transitioning towards leaving social media entirely. Because again, the algorithms are unfavorable, and from a business standpoint,
right.
For people, I tell people all the time, if you're still someone that is a sole proprietor, you're doing it, whatever that is, Facebook still makes sense. Instagram still makes sense. For some products and services, social media still makes sense. But for a lot of businesses, it just doesn't make any sense anymore to spend the time, money, and resources that people have. And so, and their question is inevitably, well, where do we go? And I'm like, well, your website actually is relevant again, for a while, because Facebook, all you needed was a Facebook page and you could sell pretty much anything. And now it's not the case. And your website, now you need to start blogging again, start talking about who you are. All that stuff you were putting on social media, now you need to put on your website, and you need to make sure that you're showing up in Google and that you're properly set up and indexed and optimized. And yeah, your website's so much more valuable now than it was just 5 years ago.
And that's a great insight, Michael. I think one of the other things that's interesting too is just thinking about in the relationship with print too, which of course you also operate print businesses as well, and thinking about important questions for me with print are, thinking about sustainability, the resourcing for that, but also making sure you have metrics to prove the benefit to those advertisers, those eyeballs, which I know you have some insights I'd be glad to hear more about to share. But those are really important things too. And then, of course, how do we think about our person-to-person connection, whether that's happening through an online platform or an in-person event like a conference or a meeting? Just how we business network, I think, has changed so much. And with the democratization of technology and social media, which has brought us many good things as well as challenges, there's so much choice of time and investment and content. I think it can feel sometimes defeating for small business owners that it's exhausting to keep up with the pace of these things. And I put the energy into writing this series of posts and no one commented or no one liked or no one shared. And so it's kind of a confusing morass. But I think the good news is, while there's not always an easy answer, there are people who've now spent 20 plus years practicing digital, and have a way forward that can at least provide some guidance and clarity to help making decisions better.
Yeah, you bring up a good point too about basically the small business owner, especially asking, where do I spend my time? From a marketing and communication standpoint, right? Because I can't do it all if I'm doing it myself, or I can't do it all if I have to spend money on it, because being everywhere costs a lot of money. So then it becomes a question of, where is and I get this question all the time. Where should I go now? Facebook isn't working anymore. That was the one thing I was doing. What's the one thing now? And my response is like, unfortunately, there is no one thing anymore. Like Facebook was an anomaly, and it gave us about 8 good years of marketing value, especially for small business owners, where basically really great marketing was free. You just had to do it yourself. And now we're just not in that environment anymore. And so you can't just rely on one strategy. What you have to do is you have to have a great website, and then you have to have strategies to drive traffic to it. And sometimes that's social media, and sometimes it's Google. And then you also need to be in other places like podcasts. I mean, I tell people that's my joke is like podcasts are the new social media, right? Because how many podcasts do you listen to?
I listen to them all the time, every day,
all day, every day. I mean, I probably have a solid 20 podcasts that I digest on a weekly basis. Some of those every day. And if you look at the time that I'm spending on a daily basis, let's call it 3 hours a day right now that I'm spending on podcasts. That used to be social media. If you look at how much time I'm spending on social media now, it's like 8 minutes. It's just such a shift, and from a marketing standpoint, you want to go where people's attention is, and people's attention's on podcasts. But the unfortunate part about that is there's not a lot of focus there, right? Like you can't be on all podcasts.
No, and I think going back to the small business question, it's also finding what outlets and tools are right for you, for your voice, for your company. And it's trial and error, right, to find that sweet spot of what works for you. And then it's the decision of, am I going to continue to invest in this, whether it's podcasting or blogging or writing reports or books or whatever media production you want to do. But I think it's about that business finding their sweet spot for their voice, their brand, what their owners want to pursue. And then, tracking that as best you can with your engagement metrics to demonstrate return on investment. But it is a challenge when there's all the work as a business owner that goes into producing the product or service itself and making sure that's of the highest quality it can be. And then there's the marketing layer on top of that, which is so important to communicating it to your customers.
Yeah, it's dizzying out there.
It is. I think, one of the things I found, especially, in the local context here, is that there are communities of practice around you, and you have to it takes time, but to build those relationships like you and I have built over time, which I'm really grateful for.
Likewise.
And continue to try to do here in the region and beyond, online as well as on site. And I think one of the key things too is just, although we've been through so much as a society, still being open to growth, where we can be open to connecting with people professionally and networking, and giving that open space for a good opportunity, a good conversation is really important. Of course, there are things we have to set aside as well, but I think that openness to possibility is really important.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the train's going by, everyone. Sorry about that. Thanks, Amtrak. A little free spot for Amtrak. I just think that for those of us that are able to work on a local level, I think that is hugely important. Nationally it becomes a little harder, obviously, right? It's hard to connect with 50 different communities around the country or 100 different communities around the country. But when you live and work locally, it's easy. You walk out your door and talk to a local business owner, so it's that local market is just so huge. And definitely, I know our focus as a company is just trying to support people locally and our friends, our neighbors, the people that we know. Our kids are going to school with each other and all the things, right? So
two things about that's a great point. One, I think remembering people as our friends and neighbors is so important in business, and treating them that way and treating them with that authenticity and kindness and sincerity, I think is very important. And then two, I think there's a huge opportunity as well as that the local can be global. Now we've talked about all the reasons why that's maybe harder in certain platforms, but there's still a possibility, I think, of sparking connection and sparking opportunity for people if they design their content or communicate it in a certain way that is attractive to a larger conversation in the business world. As a marketer yourself, people are always looking for those stories of local success that can scale in terms of interest across different markets. And sometimes I think people have maybe too local of a mindset where they maybe don't see themselves as part of a bigger conversation, but they really could be in terms of how they present themselves to others. Yeah.
Bless you, Chad. He can't hear us. No, I think that's great too. Yeah. Local is global, to your point, right? Like this community connects to another community, connects to another community, and sooner or later, that's the whole world. That's everybody.
Well, I can tell you, just even the people that I've met in the region here, in the area here, that they come from all different places, they have different backgrounds, different career paths, but there's something about the area that we're in that attracts them here, and this is where they've chosen to make their life and bring their families, and it's really positive.
I just, it's funny. I just spoke with a freelance writer today, actually, who's from out of the area, but recently moved here, and for those, just because it's just such a beautiful place to be, and we're lucky about where we live for sure.
Yeah.
So I know all that stuff was just kind of us freelance. Well, these mics pick up everything. Neal, talk to us about Stimler Advantage. Tell us about what you do.
Sure. So Stimler Advantage is a company that I started during the pandemic. I have been consulting before that in the cultural space. My background is in the art world. So I worked at the Metropolitan Museum of Art for over a decade in New York City. Had many different roles there. My background is as an art historian, but that interdisciplinary skill set has given me opportunities in different aspects of my career. I've been a big data management person, content management, licensing focus when I was at the Met, and a big portion of my earlier career was focused on open access and open source. So the open source software movement, whereby you might use an open license so that other people could take that software and build on it and improve it and help you grow its capacity and keep that to be sustainable. And then open access being using what's called an open license. So rather than copyright, which says all rights reserved, I have all the rights and I reserve them. I'm going to give you, person, a free opportunity without, in some cases, paying a fee or signing a licensing contract to use this data or use this content for your own purposes for commercial or non-commercial use. That was really big, important in the Web 2 era, and built a lot of foundation for that. We still rely on a lot of important projects from that era, like Wikipedia, for example, and the Wikimedia platforms. So that was a big aspect.
Does Wikipedia have? This is a sidebar, obviously, but do they have credibility anymore?
Well, I think the credibility for me in Wikipedia and Wikimedia is I know a lot of, and I work with a lot of Wikimedians directly. Their passion for building their repository, both of the encyclopedia and the other projects they have. The encyclopedia is just among the most notable, probably for most people in terms of what they use, but they have Wikimedia Commons, which is a huge media asset library of open content. But a lot of the best quality information on Wikimedia is found and backed up by citation, because in order in the encyclopedia for you to create an article, you need to have a cited reference. So it's not an area of just pure opinion. You have to cite other sources.
I feel like Wikipedia has become a place where pretty much anyone can make entries in a way that they see fit, whether it's factual or opinion based. Is that fair, or is that completely off?
Well, it's a complex dynamic, and I won't say that I can speak for all the community, because there's thousands of Wikimedians all over the planet, and it's organized by volunteers and contributors. But from my perspective, if you're reading a Wikipedia article, as you would read any other publication, you should be looking for citations and what those cited sources are, if they're credible or not credible. Yeah. And then you have to make those decisions for yourself, right? That's the freedom of information.
I mean, I can get behind that, the discernment. I like that, you know. I always, when people often quote Wikipedia like it's the credible source, I'm like, well, no, that's just a bunch of information. They may have some credible sources on it, but
it should be a point of reference among other things that you're researching. Yeah, investigating online, of course, that takes time. When time is money, I understand that. But as someone that came from a art history background, I always like to read more and find out more information. But so I'm
definitely always following the links and going down the rabbit hole. And again, not to get on a big tangent, I just want to get your thoughts on that, because I
think it's still a really important community, and also what's really special about it too is going back to that local is global context. Wikipedia is in many different languages, not just English. And it's given people an opportunity around the world to communicate with each other, to co-author history, to co-author information. Okay. And that collaborative process of creation of information, I think, is really exciting in many ways. Yeah. There are always challenges with it in terms of how that works, but I think it can be very optimal overall. But
there's no perfect system, I guess.
There isn't, So open source, open access is part of my work. I've worked internationally in Europe and Australasia a bit. And with Stimler Advantage, I'm bringing all of that collective experience across cultures, software projects, licensing, strategy, to help organizations with their organizational and digital strategy needs. So on the digital transformation side, a lot of the work that I do is to help people with usually a specific software or suite of softwares or work processes that are really key to the operation of their business. So optimizing that, maybe replacing it, upgrading it, looking at its cost, looking at how people are using it or not using it correctly. Other parts of where I help too on that software side are I do a lot of testing for people to see if it's the right fit for them, to see if it's a good product fit for what they need. Yeah. So I'll help do them research and say, well, of these 5 providers, while 2 of the 5 are great, the one you probably need is X. And so I might guide them to making a recommendation in that regard. If it's metaverse enablement, which I'm still very interested in, it's thinking about what your content and your products and services are now and how we might consume them or interact with them in those environments, knowing they're still changing and evolving. On the strategy side, I'm really working with CEOs, with their boards, with their leadership teams on thinking about dynamic strategy. And what I mean by dynamic strategy is not a printed PDF 1 to 5 year strategic plan, as we talked about earlier. We really can't live in that world of strategic planning, which is looking 10 years to the future. Yeah. So for me, dynamic strategic planning is really about creating a framework on your mission, vision, and values and your products and services and thinking about your customers. And then knowing that it's going to be agile, knowing that your targets are going to change faster. But the really important thing on top of that is making sure that you have key performance indicators that are targeting those metrics of success so that you know you've achieved these goals. So many organizations I've tried to help in the past, they have very lofty goals to achieve. And then when you actually look at the evidence a year later, there might not be any evidence or not enough evidence to confirm that they've achieved those goals. Right. And that's important for the health of those organizations, if they have shareholders, if they have boards that are responsible for them, making sure that they do what they say that they do. And also really focusing the limit on what are the things that we can do that we can afford, and making sure that we're looking for, I think, more of sustainability and resilience than growth, because growth in and of itself, I think, is very challenging, especially with the resourcing challenges across the world we've seen with supply chains or just the difficulty of the economy.
Oh my God, there's so much.
So making sure that it's more about managing to be enough, but not exhausting yourself. And so that's the strategy work I try to do for people. I have a framework called the 5 S's framework that I've developed that I try to use with folks. And I really help them evaluate and customize to what they need with tactical and strategic help. On my tactical work, especially around software or a key strategic issue, it's something I can typically solve in 1 to 3 months. And then for bigger picture stuff, it's typically a bit longer, 6 to 9 months or 6 months to a year. So I come in with the organization. I always try to set up the goal of having them be self-sufficient and sustainable when I leave. Sure. My goal is to solve the problem as best I can and to help them feel that they are enabled to go forward.
Kind of work yourself out of a job, it sounds like.
Well, this is actually a good thing because
Yeah.
this is actually the way that my career has happened. So one of the roles that I had earlier in my career, I helped design the software workflow that made that job obsolete, which enabled me to then go on to do other things.
Yeah.
So thinking back to that AI conversation, I think that's interesting as well. But I'm trying to constantly learn. My reading, my listening, my conversations with people. I'm a hungry learner. I always want to be learning more and trying new things and trying to bring that to help people. So my goal is to help them be successful, and it's about their success that I'm most interested in.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I mean by work yourself out of a job, right? Like if you're successful, if you're doing it right, then at some point you fix the problem and that you can move on to do something else, right?
Well, I think for me, it's my intention. I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
to stand by people as best I can and really hold them through that process of transformation. And I think that is also something I really strive for, although it's always a challenge, but I really strive to help people authentically and to give them my vision of things. And I do speak about myself as a visionary leader, and that I'm not here just to help you be a functionalist. I'm trying to help you go forward. And it's really important, I think, when the clients that I try to engage, that they're ready to do the work.
Yeah.
That we've come to a point of agreement, we're ready to go, we're ready to get it done, and then we're going to commit to it. It's hard to do with so many distractions in life and business, but those are the kinds of projects where I see the best outcomes for people is when the leadership or the team is already committed to that goal.
And what size companies do you find yourself working with?
Sure.
Typically.
So it's actually pretty interdisciplinary and a large variety. I've worked with governments, both the federal government, and I've worked with the city of New York, for example, as a client. So I've worked with nonprofits and educational institutions. So it really varies who finds me and who I find to work with. So it's a quite a wide spectrum of people.
Okay. And any industries or what's the word? Any industries that you like to focus on or that you get the most enjoyment out of?
Sure. Well, I certainly like working on complex, intellectual, challenging work, and I find that people usually come to me when the challenge is pretty serious, as opposed to something that maybe others could solve. So I like those kinds of big picture challenges and moving the needle forward on that. In terms of industry, it's really, or project types, I would say it's strategic planning. Again, bringing a more dynamic sense of that process as opposed to just a glossy marketing tool. Not that marketing isn't important, but
we're a bunch of charlatans over here in the marketing space.
The document should be more than that in terms of its usefulness in my mind. And then with the software projects, it's a lot of content management, enterprise content management, document management, data management, media assets. So anything from videos, documents, images. I have a lot of expertise in that space. Yeah. And really what I find is that the technology projects, because of the way that businesses are set up today, they impact so many other parts of the business that not having, for example, good document management could really be undermining your executive strategy because people can't find the document, don't know where it is, don't know how it's tagged, can't deploy it in the right context. And that's undermining the marketing team. That's undermining the team on the floor.
Listen, I can tell you firsthand, I worked with I don't want to say a large organization, but there was, 100, 150 employees in the organization. And every time I needed something from a marketing standpoint, it was an egg hunt. Yep. And it was never in the same place. There was no rhyme or reason. Like you couldn't. God, it was so frustrating because it would literally you'd spend an hour looking for a document or an image or something. It's just how important that is.
A really great project that ended about a year ago now, or getting close to that now, where I was bringing together disparate knowledge sources from email, from document storage, from media asset libraries in different places. And working with a leadership team to really define that single source of truth. Yeah. And helping them understand the importance of doing that within the time that they had and not letting it drag on like a long project so that they had the resource and they could build on it going forward in the future. And it was great. I had the chance to train contractors and a project team and build that team up to be successful, finding people that were capable of doing the work. And then I really enjoyed giving them support as they were learning through the system and the bugs. And then it was so satisfying to see people happy at the end of that result where they could find the things they were looking for. They were able to better support their colleagues in the production of what they were making. And they weren't tearing their hair out trying to figure, where is that? What folder is that in?
I wonder if it was with the company that I worked with.
But it's nice to see those happy faces. And of course, that's what I would like to see in all my engagements. But it's rewarding to see people be able to build what I like to call platforms of possibility. Yeah. So you've achieved this goal, whether it's a policy decision in terms of strategic planning or a framework, or if it's a technical solution like software, You solve that problem. It's almost like building a house. You can build the next floor. But if you don't finish that work, if you don't make it shored up correctly, you're never going to go on to the next phase.
That's it, right? Yeah, Chad in the next room that's sneezing and blowing his nose so that everyone on the show can hear it. He likes to say that he tries to act like a carpenter and always be looking a couple steps ahead. Or how was a carpenter building stairs? Always looking a couple steps ahead kind of deal. Yeah.
Yeah, but it really is amazing how these things can scale. I'll go back to Wikipedia for a second on that. So one of the things that I did was I helped the Metropolitan Museum of Art guide its open access program and launch in 2017. And now those media assets, so pictures of artworks in the collection via Wikimedia platforms have been viewed billions of times since 2017.
That's crazy.
Billion with a B. And that's because we created with the Wikimedia community and with the museum procedures at the time, we created that platform. And I've done that for other clients as well. And when you build things where the policy, the frameworks, the marketing, the technology are all working together concurrently, you can really see things scale well and success for what those goals are. I think sometimes where people sometimes get caught off guard is they think it's too much. I can't think about all these things at the same time. I can't be holistic in my approach. But I find that's actually the best way to guarantee a stronger opportunity for success because you've thought about all those dimensions critically. You've talked to your team members or your legal counsel or whoever you need to get advice from on certain issues. You've done your due diligence as best you can and you make a forward run and you go for it. And then you build those things on top of it. And one of the most important things I would say there is around metrics. So if you build a great product or service and you launch it, but you don't concurrently launch with your metrics and reporting at the same time concurrently, your ability to report to your shareholders, your customers, your stakeholders on that success be incredibly limited. And I think people often do that because they're in a hurry or they're tired, they run out of gas, they think, oh, metrics is something I can do 6 months from now. But if you don't track it right at the same moment you have the launch, you won't really get the business intelligence you need to understand it better over time.
Track, measure, grow. I remember reading an article 20 years ago talking about track, measure, grow, right? And how important you can't grow something if you can't measure it, and you can't measure it if you're not tracking data, how important that is.
Well, and also making sure from the strategic planning side, the right goals.
Yeah.
Are you tracking the right goals that really matter to you, that will actually demonstrate impact or value? And will those metrics also hold you accountable? And I think that's something that businesses struggle with themselves too. It's something I work on for myself as a small business owner. But am what I'm doing make sense? Is it impactful? Does it help the people I want to help? If it doesn't, I need to find a new set of metrics and readjust what I'm doing.
Yeah. And the accountability piece is huge too for small business because I know small business owners, we don't always want to hold ourselves accountable to what we're supposed to be doing. And we don't always, like you said, we're not necessarily tracking the right metrics because we might be ignoring the right metrics because we're not doing the right things. But
right. I think that the challenge for some people can be that there's a sense you're searching for trying to achieve perfection. But it's really continuous quality improvement. We as human beings aren't perfect. So it's important that we have visionary aspirations. So we set goals for ourselves. Yeah. But we also have to have the patience and the context to be gracious with ourselves. And I think both of those things can be done.
That's nice. I like that. Showing yourself a little grace. So Neal, I know we're about out of time here, but if people want to find you, if they want to learn more about you, if you can help them, where do they go? Where do they find you?
Well, going back to our conversation about websites,
yes, sir.
www.stimleradvantage.com. I'm also on LinkedIn as Neal Stimler, and my company is also there on LinkedIn as Stimler Advantage.
How would you prefer? What's the best thing? Should someone connect with you on LinkedIn? Should they just call you up, or what's?
I like my website has a connect form. You can send me a form there, and then LinkedIn is great for me too.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Michael, thank you so much. It's a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Yeah, always. That's great to see you and great to chat. Love hearing your perspective and then the knowledge that you have on things, which is obviously extensive. And if you're out there listening, give Neal a call. If you got a business, small business, medium business, big business, give him a call. I'm sure he can help you out with some of the structure and strategy and all the moving bits of your company. So, Neal, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Everyone, thanks for listening. Remember, buy on local. It's because local is global. If you want to change the world, buy local.
The superpower that every citizen has is the ability to control where they spend their time, money, and attention. By focusing these on supporting local businesses, you are having a profound impact on your friends, your family, and your local community. So if you want to change the world, you can start with buying local.